All right, today we're going to deconstruct default risk. We're going to break it down into the core concepts that every single financial risk manager, every CRO, absolutely has to have in their toolkit.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the big picture, total risk over time. Then we'll zoom right in on that year-to-year hazard. After that, we'll look at risk from the perspective of the original group, see how all these pieces connect, and then, finally, we'll see how this all fits into the risk manager's day-to-day toolkit.
You know, this really is the central question, isn't it? Because if you're a credit risk officer, you know that one number almost never gives you the full story. So what we're going to do is unpack that story and show how three very different probabilities actually give you three essential views of the exact same risk.
So, let's start with the one most of us are familiar with. This is the big, long-term perspective, the cumulative probability of default. You can think of it as the total risk that just keeps building up over time.
So what does this actually mean? Well, it's the total, accumulating risk right from the second a loan gets issued. It's the number that answers the question, what is the total chance of this borrower failing by the end of, say, year 3? This is really our baseline for understanding that lifetime risk.
And here's the formula that's driving all of this. It's an exponential function, and you don't even need to be a math whiz to get the key insight here. Just look at the t for time. As that t gets bigger, the whole value of the formula, f of t, has to go up. It's really that simple. The longer the timeline, the higher the total risk. It's intuitive and it's absolutely foundational. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. We're moving from that total cumulative risk to the risk within a specific single year. And this is where things start to get really interesting, especially for anyone doing year-on-year forecasting. This one answers a totally different but just as critical question. It's for managing your active portfolio. It asks, okay, for all the accounts that actually made it to the start of this year, what's the risk they won't make it to the next one? It's basically the hazard rate just for the survivors. And here's where we run into something a little strange, but incredibly important about this standard model. When you actually run the numbers to calculate the conditional risk for each year, well, look what happens. You get the exact same number every single time. Year 1, year 2, year 3, the risk is perfectly constant. That's right. For the people who start the loan, there's a 4.88% chance they default in year 1. Then, for the group that survives year 1, there's a, you guessed it, 4.88% chance they default in year 2. And it happens again in year 3, same number.
I mean, that feels a little weird, right? It seems totally counterintuitive. Shouldn't risk change over time? Shouldn't a borrower's track record of not defaulting matter? Well, in this specific model, the answer is nope.
And here's why. It all comes down to something called the memoryless property of this model. What that really means is that the model assumes that surviving the past gives you zero information about your risk in the future. Every borrower who survives starts each new year with a completely clean slate. Now, we know that's a simplification, but it's a super powerful one for building our core understanding. Okay, on to the third and final piece of our puzzle. This one is different again. It doesn't look at risk from the perspective of the survivors. It looks at it from the perspective of the entire group that you started with on day 1. So unlike the conditional probability, this one doesn't care who survived. It's all about how many people default out of that initial cohort. It answers the question, what percentage of my original 10,000 borrowers are going to default specifically in year 3? And check this out. The probability here actually goes down every year. It drops from 4.88% all the way down to 4.41%. So why is that? Well, it's pretty simple. With each year that goes by, there are fewer and fewer people left from that original group who could possibly default. The pool of potential defaulters is literally shrinking. This slide just nails the key difference. Conditional PD is all about the individual. What's the risk for any one person who's still in the game? Unconditional PD is about the crowd. Out of everyone we started with, how many are going to fall this year? One measures the intensity of the risk. The other measures the volume of defaults. Both are totally correct. They just answer different questions. So, let's recap. We have a cumulative risk that's rising, a conditional risk that's perfectly flat, and an unconditional risk that's falling. It sounds like a contradiction, right? But it's not. And now we get to the aha moment where we connect it all. So how is it possible for the risk per person to stay the same, while the number of defaults from the original group goes down. Well, there's this really elegant relationship here that it's just fundamental to all credit risk modeling. Getting this is what separates the pros.
And here it is. It's beautifully simple. The unconditional probability, that risk to the original group, is just the probability of surviving up to that year multiplied by the conditional risk during that year. You absolutely need both pieces.
I love this analogy from the source material. It just captures the idea perfectly. You have to survive long enough to even make it to the gate for year 3 before you can have any chance of falling at that gate. The unconditional probability goes down not because the gate is any less risky, but because fewer and fewer people even make it that far. So, the big question, why does all this matter? I mean, why is this more than just some interesting theory for your day-to-day work as a risk professional? Because these probabilities are the engine. They are the absolute guts behind the models you are using every single day. Doesn't matter if you're building transition matrices, forecasting losses for IFRS 9, calculating lifetime expected credit loss, or running stress tests for your Basel models. These concepts are the bedrock of all of it. And here it is, the whole story on a single slide. These are the 3 distinct but deeply interconnected ways to look at default risk. You've got the cumulative view showing the total risk building up, the conditional view showing that constant annual hazard for the survivors, and the unconditional view showing the expected number of defaults from your original cohort. And that, right there, is the crucial takeaway. This simple model gives us the fundamental language and structure. The real art and science of risk management, your job, begins when we ask, how do we adapt this? How do we take that constant hazard rate and make it dynamic? Make it reflect the reality of an aging portfolio or a changing economy. Mastering that is the real game, and that's the challenge we'll leave you with today.